Alright guys, so in this part we're going to be covering multi-stage triggers. In the previous part we only saw things that can turn on and off. But here we can have switches that cycle through many colors. So let's say it goes from red to white to red to blue. And this door can also be multi-stage. Right now I can't go through it because only half the puzzle is solved. The other half is that I need to open this. That's when the door fully opens. You can also use it for water level valves or pretty much anything with many stages. I've made this part 2 because I think part 1 covers what most people will use it for. This is a bit more specific. So let's quickly get into it. So let's start by getting our multi-stage trigger in. Here we go. Okay. So you'll notice it's mostly the same, okay? You have a profile, you have an input method, you have linked actors. We'll add a linked actor a bit later, widget and such. The only thing is, instead of having a single on and off stage, we're going to have multiple on and off stages. So after our level sequence, we'll have it this way. By default, it's just a white switch. When we press it, it goes and becomes a red switch. When we press it again, it becomes blue. Then when we press it again, it can go backwards. This is the way we'll set it up. Or you can also set it so that it cycles back around and starts from the beginning. So what's important to know is that this first stage is called stage 0. This stage is called stage 1 and this stage is called stage 2. And how many level sequences will we need for this? We'll just need 2 on and 2 off sequences. One on to go from 0 to 1 and back, and one on to go from 1 to 2 and an off to go back. Let's start by making the stages. 2 on stages and 2 off stages. Actually, I'll make it from scratch. It's similar to before, but I'll show you how to change the materials. We're going to start with all stages, okay? You don't have to do it this way, but it's a lot easier. So let me add the same old. Let's add the multi-stage trigger in. Let me add the switch in. Now you have to find which slot your material is in. So here you can see my materials in world grid material. I just add my slot world grid material. And now again, if I open the material, what you will see is that there's a color parameter and brightness and roughness. So these 3 parameters will come in directly. Once I go into the level sequencer and I say add, I can see all 3 parameters. For now, I'm just going to change the roughness. So it's going to go from white to red in the middle. Nice. To blue in the end. This is how I go from 0 to 1. This is how I go from 1 to 2. This is how I go from 2 to 1. This is how I go from 1 to 0. So we'll need a few copies of this. So I'll just call it color underscore 0 to 1. And this is going to be color underscore 1 to 2. So 0 to 1 is going to be just this much here. It's going to end here. This is a bit important, guys. Play it once, okay, till the end. You can see it snaps back to white. And that's because that's the ending and it's ending a bit before the ending. So make sure they coincide. Now if I play it once, you'll see it stays at red. So that was stage 0 to 1. We do something similar for 1 to 2. This is how the next stage looks, to go from red to blue. Perfect. So I'll just copy paste this and I'll make 0 to 1 off, or rather 1 to 0. I'll take 1 to 0, I'll plug it in here and let's just change it so that it goes from red to white. And same way we make 2 to 1 as well. 2 to 1, blue to red. There we go. So we go from white to red, red to blue, blue back to red, red back to white. And we can keep doing that. Now let's take a look at this failure level sequence. So in 1 to 2, it goes from red to blue. Suppose I have to hold F for 2 seconds for it to go from red to blue. But I release it after 1 second. That counts as a failure. What do you do in case of a failure? Are you going to go back to the start state? And in that case, you'll need a custom level sequence for that failure. That's when you fill this in. We can add this option. Player can't trigger unless he has tags. So now it goes from stage 0 to 1, no problem, from white to red. But when it's at red, it can't move on. It can't go to the next stage unless somehow the player has a tag, yes. Maybe he picks up a key and it gives him the tag or something. And there's also the automatically turns off after some time option. So for each stage, you've got to say which stage it is, how long it stays on. Does he have to have a tag? This you can combine with the previous one. And if he triggers before the time is up, do you want to add more time or do you want to fail? Now, if any stage fails, maybe I want to go back to stage 0. In this case, that's when you add the failure level sequence. So here we can see it works. Now let's talk about multi-stage doors, okay? It's the same concept, the exact same concept. I'll show you what I've already done. For level sequence 0, it opens up like this. And for 1, it opens up all the way. Now you can directly connect a multi-stage trigger to a door, in which case it just mirrors the trigger. So I'll show you how to do that. Yeah, I've just made it better to look at. So now what happens is, if I press F once, it opens. If I press it again, it opens all the way. We can go back as well. But there's a chance you might want to have a multi-stage condition, especially if you're going through all this effort. Maybe I want it to be red and blue, right? Only then it opens. So let's keep 2 switches or triggers. And let's do the same thing we did last time. We just go into our conditions and we add our multi-stage trigger condition here. So now instead of these two communicating directly with this, they're going to communicate to the box first. So the linked actor is now going to be the box, and this linked actor will also be the box. Now let's go into the box itself. We'll just have to set up a pattern. I want 2 switches. This is why I explained stages to you in the beginning. I want switch 1 to be, let's say, stage 1 and switch 2 to be stage 2. So what that means is, unless switch 1 is red and switch 2 is blue, it won't open. And once it is done, it has to send a signal to this blue and the door opens, but it's a multi-stage door. So we've only sent one activation signal. So if you are not directly connecting a switch to a door, right, a multi-stage switch to a door, then you will need the same number of activations as the stage. So let's suppose this is the second switch, okay, and I connect this to the door. This is when it will work. So let me link it to the door, make it red, this becomes blue, so it's half open, but only one out of the 2 stages are open. If I activate this as well, it's fully open. So this is an example of a case where you need 2 activations in order to open a door. Now guys, you can do this as well. It's a little complicated, so I'll just show it to you on Paint. So suppose this is a barrier and there are a few things going on. Let's say this is a pressure plate switch. Let's say maybe this is a lever somewhere. This is another lever. And this is another pressure plate switch. Now in order for this door to open, let's say I need a player to be standing on this. I need this switch to be on. I need a player to be standing on this as well, but I want this switch to be off. First, we're going to link all of these to their own conditions. These in turn are going to send their data to another condition over here. So the conditions are not going to be linked to the door. They're going to be linked to other conditions. So they're going to be linked to this one. And this one will check, is this condition on? Is this condition on? Is this condition off? And is this condition on? If that's true, then this is linked to this and it will tell it to open. Guys, I hope you like the plugin. Enjoy. I'll just take the same audio from before. Oh, why? Let's redo it. But now it might be the case that you want two switches to be in a particular pattern. Let's say I want this to be red and this to be blue. But it might be that you want the two switches to be in a particular pattern, maybe red and blue. This is why I told you what stages are, because we want this to be stage 1 and this to be stage 2. So that's when we just get in our trigger condition, multi-stage trigger condition. Here we go. We link this to the condition. That's this one. And we link this also to the condition. Now in the condition we have to say what pattern we want. So my pattern is going to be, I want this left side switch to be red, which is 1, and I want this right side switch to be blue, which is 2. And once it's done, you're going to send a signal to that door. Now there's a problem here, but I'll tell you what happens after we press play. Why is that happening? Oh yeah, okay. So we press F, this becomes red, this will become blue. What's this in here? Okay, so we press F and it becomes red. We can make this blue as well. Why did I die? Okay, cut to this, red, blue, and the door opens, but it's a multi-stage door. So we've only sent one activation signal. So if you are not directly connecting a switch to a door, right, a multi-stage switch to a door, then you will need the same number of activations as the stage. In other words, you'll need the same number of conditions as the stage. So let's suppose this is the second switch, okay, and I connect this to the door. This is when it will work. So let me link it to the door. So now let me just make it red. This becomes blue. So it's half open, but only one out of the two stages are open. If I activate this as well, it's fully open. So this is an example of a case where you need two activations in order to open a door. Now the last thing I'll do is I'll just show it on paint because I don't really want to make it. Now guys, you can do this as well. It's a little complicated, so I'll just show it to you on paint. You can have a door, okay, or anything. Maybe it's okay. You can have a door or anything, any barrier that prevents you from going to another area. And this can't happen unless a few things happen. So let's say this is a pressure plate, a bunch of pressure plate switches, and this is a bunch of trees, okay? And let's say on this side we just have a lever, so I'll just make it a square lever. So over here we have a lever, and finally maybe you have to stand on some more pressure plate switches over here on the right. So now what I'm going to do is, how am I going to account for all of these? So first, okay, now in order for this to open, we need a few things to happen. First, this tree should not be cut. Then this pressure plate, the player has to stand on it. The player has to have activated the switch, and the player has to, maybe his companion has to stand on this pressure plate as well. So what we're going to do is here, we're going to have one switch here, okay? We're going to have one switch here, one switch condition here. It activates only if this is activated. We're going to have a switch condition here that activates only if this is off. One more switch condition here for this. One more switch condition here for this. Then we're going to have a switch condition here. Now these are how they're going to be connected. This will be connected to this, this to this, this to this, this to this. All of these will be connected to this one right here. That's the linked actors, and this will be connected to the door. This only activates if this pattern is met. That is, this is correct, this is correct, this is correct, and this is wrong. So this is a more complex application of this. Now, what did I miss here? Setup. I need to go back to the setup. Fine, I'll do that. What is under more options? I think I have a bunch of stuff, right? When to activate interaction widget is fine. Okay. Now if you want something like a Legend of Zelda chest opening where the player has to be stuck here and you have some fancy camera movements, I'm going to show you how to fix the player and the camera. So first let's add the character in. So that is my BP third person character. Add him in. We do the same steps as before. Remove the control rig, remove the transform, and convert him to a player pawn. Good. So let me get him here so that I know where he is, or how it's going to look. And I'll add an animation. Oh, nice. Now we want the player to be here. So what we did before, we just leave it this way. He's going to play this animation wherever he is, whichever direction he or she is facing. So what we're going to do is we're going to snap the player into this place. For that we need to add two actors, okay? They're called snap character and snap trigger. Add them in, just make sure they're not spawnable, and You can just approximately match their position and rotation. Perfect. So not really perfect, but good enough. I'll add snap character too. Make sure you add it into this, and we need the snap trigger as well. Again, this can just be very approximate, it's fine. And we are going to add it in. And lastly, I want some sort of fancy camera movement, okay? So I'm going to add this. This will add a cine camera actor. And before we do anything, make sure you press this plus button and attach it to whatever you want. I'll attach it to the triggered object. Now you can do whatever you want in the camera and everything will work out fine. So let me just go here. I'm going to say I want the camera to start from here. And I want it to maybe go out here. Yeah, that looks like a very nice level sequence. So now let me show you the final product. So let me go in here. First we need to pick up the key, of course. Now even if I'm facing this way, oh, what happened? Oh, that's all I do. Okay, fine. Just wasted so much time. Backwards is if you play it in reverse, right? It plays, but then it snaps back to the old color. So I'd suggest making your own custom